is creeping, it's right outside. So come on in, and don't be shy. We've got ghosts and UFOs. Brace yourself, get ready for the show. Don't be afraid of the dark. The fun's about to start. Nightmares our tales will inspire. Oh, tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Have you heard tell of a demon next door? Or maybe a cryptid on the lake shore? There's nothing too strange for us here. So if you're ready, stamp out your fear. Don't be afraid of the dark. The fun's about to start. Nightmares our tales will inspire. Tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Whoa, whoa.
Welcome back, campers, to episode 9 of the Scaredy Campfires. Tonight, we're crossing into territory where the rules bend and the dead don't stay quiet, where abandoned houses hold more than broken floorboards. They hold echoes of things that refuse to move on, where forests don't just hide wildlife, they hide watchers. And where the line between our world and theirs is nothing but a whisper. So huddle close, the fire's still burning for now. We all have routines, little rituals to make us feel safe. Lock the door, say it out loud, check it twice. But what happens when the house disagrees? When the locks don't hold? The cold creeps in, and something or someone decides to let itself in. Tonight's first story comes from Reddit user u/ectempesta89, who learned that even the most ordinary evenings can unravel in seconds when the door you know you locked isn't. This happened a couple of hours ago. I was puttering around the house, picking things up and making sure the house was set for the evening. As I walked into the kitchen to put some things away, I saw that the back sliding door was open. I remembered I had heard the furnace kick on earlier, so I decided to close and lock the door for the evening and to prevent any more unnecessary heat loss. I was about to tell my partner that I was locking the house up for the night when I remembered that I had left my tools outside. So, instead of closing and locking the door, I opened the door and went out onto the deck to collect my tools. I gathered my tools, came inside, and was then able to close and lock the door for the night. After doing so, I announced to my partner that I had closed and locked the back door for the night as a way to help me remember and so that he was aware it had been done. Simple enough, right? Side note, I guess he never heard me, but I specifically remember saying it out loud because this is something I do to help me remember things better. If I say it out loud, it doesn't stay stuck in my head and get forgotten. Does that make sense? Anyway. Immediately after closing and locking the door, I set my tools down on the kitchen floor and watched my cat come into the kitchen through the little cat door cut out of the bottom of our basement door located in the kitchen. She likes sitting and staring out into the backyard when we have it open, so she's been coming to the back door every time she hears it open or close. Classical conditioning at its finest. I then took the drill battery and charger from the tools I carried inside to the kitchen island to plug them in. With the battery plugged into the charger and the charger plugged into the outlet, I began walking out of the kitchen when I got hit by a cold breeze. As I looked in the direction that I felt the cold air coming from, I was shocked to see my cat laying down and staring out of the sliding back door that is now open about 6 inches. My mind started reeling, going over every second from the time I locked the door to the time I saw it open. It couldn't have been more than 20 to 30 seconds, and that's being wicked generous. Now, as my brain was breaking, I felt my whole body begin to shake and my eyes well up with tears. I had no control over this physiological response, nor had I ever experienced this type of reaction to a perceived paranormal event. I was so confused and everything felt so strange. I stumbled around for a few seconds trying to get my bearings. I finally made it to the living room and sat down on the armrest of the couch to tell my partner what just happened. He got up to look at the now open sliding door. He was skeptical, understandably, saying I probably just got distracted, plugging in the battery and forgot to close and lock the door. That totally sounds like something I'd do. That must have been what happened, right? Right? The problem is, I remember exactly what my order of operations was from the time I walked into the kitchen to the time I stumbled out. I've had some easily dismissible things happen since we moved into this house 8 months ago. Knocks, footsteps, shadows out of the corner of your eye, but all of it is so easily dismissible that it's not even worth mentioning. With one minor exception, I've gone downstairs in the morning to see one of the battery-operated taper candles turned on in our dining area 3 times within the past few months, the last time being only 2 days ago. But again, totally dismissible. I know I locked it, so now what? Is this a glitch in the Matrix? Does my cat have telekinetic powers? Or maybe a friendly entity opened it for her? I have no idea, and I'm sure you don't either, but that's okay. I'm not looking for answers, necessarily. I just needed to get it out and figured I could entertain a few people with a very real, very true story of a strange event that I just can't seem to wrap my head around. The door stayed closed after that. The cat kept watching. And to this day, the user still announces every locked door, as if saying it out loud could keep whatever's out from coming back in. But here's the question, campers. If a spirit can turn on candles, how hard is a deadbolt really? Some shadows don't just follow you, they choose you. From childhood games to adult bedrooms, one woman found herself stalked by a presence too consistent to ignore. Tall, faceless, dressed in black, always watching from the edge of vision, always stepping closer when she's alone. And when a witch confirmed what she already knew, that it wasn't just in her head, the real horror began. This is the story of Reddit user u/expensive_scratch_98 and the dark figure that never let go. It all started when we were playing hide and seek in the construction site next to my house. I was the seeker, and when I walked up to the balcony, I saw a black, tall, shadowy figure walking next to our fence. That was for the first time I have ever seen this figure. Later on, a couple of weeks later, I was visiting my friend's house, and once again, we were playing hide and seek in their house, and while I was seeking, I passed bedroom of their parents, and while I was passing, I looked inside, and have seen a shadow figure peeking at me from behind the bed. However, this time I was able to see it in more detail, and it was a tall figure dressed all in black with no face, with black hat. That was for the first time I got really spooked and told my friends later on what I have seen. However, they did not believe me. After a couple of years, I have not seen it anymore. I had just a couple of weird feelings and encounters until I graduated and moved to the capital of my country. And I moved in with my now ex-boyfriend. I always had a very bad feeling when I was alone that somebody is with me in the room no matter where I was, until I met my neighbor and she was some kind of a witch. So after moving to our new apartment, I started to see this person again in our house only when I was alone. It was standing in the entrance to our apartment just watching when I was taking a shower. I literally jumped because something said my name out loud in the bathroom. Then, one night, while I was playing, that was the scariest encounter. A face came from my left side directly to my face, and that made me jump and scream. At that moment, I stood up and told out loud, "I don't know who you are or what you are, but leave me freaking alone." Sometime after that, one night, me and my boyfriend, we woke up to very weird sound coming from right side of the wall, where on the other side was nothing. It was like a scratching sound that moved under our bed, and behind our bed. That was the first time my boyfriend got really scared, even though he did not believe in paranormal stuff. After that, I had a couple of nights without any encounter until my neighbor came to visit us and we had a deep talk. One point, I never told her about this before. She had no idea about any of this happening before. She asked me from nowhere, "Hey, I have something to ask you, but please don't get spooked or anything." She told me, "Hey, don't get scared, but there is somebody in your bedroom standing and watching us. It's a tall, dark person, and it's standing on the right side of the bed." I went completely pale, and I told her, "Yes, that's my side of the bed." After that, we both went silent for some time to process what she just told me, and from there it started to go a little crazy. Every time she came to our house, she asked me if I can close the door to the bedroom because it's really creepy to see it standing there and watching. Another couple of weeks passed by, and then she asked me again, like, "Hey, did you do something?" I asked her, "No, why?" "Because the thing is standing now on the left side of the bed." I went pale again and told her, "Yes, we have changed sides, and I seek now on my left side." And she told me, "Oh my god, the thing may be really attached to you since it's moving everywhere with you." Later, she started to see it also in the living room every time when I was in the living room, but I had no idea what was its purpose or what it wanted from me. 3 years have passed and we moved to Spain, where I currently live, and it seems to have passed on to my sister because one day she called me and told me, "Hey, you remember your dark, tall friend?" "Yes, why?" "Because he is haunting me now." Do you have any idea what it may have been? I've seen a lot of paranormal stuff when I was a child, also teenager, and I still sometimes have weird encounters, but it's not as intense as it was before. I also have a video of a bottle where the lid started jumping up and down on its own. There was no gas. The bottle had nothing, it just started moving up and down. I may upload it for you guys later if you want to see it. Thanks in advance for any ideas. The figure vanished from her life, only to reappear in her sister's, which makes you wonder, was it ever hers to begin with? Or was she just one stop on something older, hungrier, and far more patience and less journey? Sleep tight, campers, and maybe leave on a light for the things that wear hats but have no faces. Some houses don't just feel wrong, they remember wrong, like the one Reddit user u/JFFH140624 grew up in, where the walls kept secrets about Ouija boards and broken doors, where little brothers screamed about men lighting fires in the corners, where mothers heard breathing in empty rooms, and where one morning a simple declaration, "I think the ghosts are gone," made up a cup shatter into a million pieces, as if something disagreed loudly. So this happened to me when I was around 13 or 14, so about 14 years ago, but I'll set the vibe. We had moved into this house when I was 6 and I never liked it. could never settle in it. I would actually, for months when we first moved in, put myself to sleep by repeating there's no such thing as monsters. Anyways, 2 years later, my little brother was born, and when he was 3 or 4, he moved into my old room, and I got the bigger room. He would always wake up screaming, saying there was a man in the corner or his room trying to light it on fire. We could only get him to settle back to sleep if we put on Fireman Sam the kids show. Even when he slept in my mum's room, he'd have these episodes, waking up saying someone's in the corner and there's bugs crawling all over the ground. So creepy, but we thought maybe a bit of night terrors or imaginations. Fast forward another 5 to 6 years, I was having breakfast and my mum tells me she had such a strange experience the night before and she was so scared she was gonna come sleep in with me. She said she was asleep but woke up to the sound of someone breathing in her ear. Now, in her sleepy haze for a few seconds, thought it was my brother, but then remembered he was at his dad's. She jumped up and turned the light on. Nobody there. So I went to school and came home to her burning sage in her room and her room only. I was like, would you not sage the whole house? No. But she only had a little left and was going to get more tomorrow. Grand. Didn't think much of it. Didn't really believe her story either. Until the next morning, I was off sick from school, tonsillitis. Mum gone to work. I was happily sitting in my bed playing Sims. Then I felt it, almost a bubble feeling around my head, kind of like when you are underwater. And when I heard it, this really breathy breathing in my right ear, the one that if someone was standing beside me, that would be the air they'd be breathing in. Now, it wasn't a scary breathing, it was just big deep breaths, and I didn't feel threatened, but safe to say, I shit myself and legged it downstairs. Ran my mum and told her and stayed downstairs all day until she came home. Woman forgot the sage. Grand. I'll just get murdered. Thanks, ma. Went to bed, nothing happened, but the next morning, same setup. I was happily playing Sims and it happened again. I remember I just put my hands up and said, okay, I'm going downstairs, but this time I made sure to take my laptop with me to continue playing Sims, lol. My ma came home that day with Sage and did the whole house. It didn't happen again after that, but a few weeks later my nanny bought me a special heat-resistant mug for drinking green tea from. That was our thing. And my mum and me were standing in the kitchen talking, making tea, and I said, as I pouring the water into my new cup to make the tea, hey, I think the ghosts are gone. And when I say I hadn't even put more than a drop of water, it was barely a splash, and the whole glass shattered into a million of tiny pieces. My ma and me just looked at each other and laughed and said, well, I guess not then. But yeah, that's my story. Nothing else ever happened after that. We moved a couple of years later, and then my lovely mum then one day told me, oh yeah, when I was younger, that house was boarded up, and a group of us broke in and did an Ouija board, and things started moving around the place, so we ran and never went in again. Sound ma for opening a portal to the spirit world and have us all move in 15 years later. So yeah, that's my only paranormal experience and hopefully the last. The sage worked, the family moved, but that house, it's still out there. And if the ghosts did leave, well, they made sure to slam the door on their way out. Moral of the story, never trust a home where the previous tenants were reckless enough to play Ouija, especially when your mom was one of them. There are places where the rules don't apply, where voices echo with no source, where animals move wrong, and where children learn too early that some things want to be seen. Tonight's fourth story comes from Reddit user u/bugs4, who grew up in the deep Maine woods, where the trees watch back, and whatever calls your name isn't always yours to answer. Hi, I've never actually posted before and just read things on here usually. However, I really would like guidance or answers, and no one in my life believes me enough to help or has any idea. I'm an 18-year-old girl who grew up in rural Maine and still live here, though in a slightly different location today. As a kid, my family and I lived in a solid chunk of land in the middle of the woods close to the East Coast. When I was young, probably 6 or 7, my brother and I started hearing my mother loudly yell one of our names to come inside. However, it sounded like the voice was coming from above or behind our house. And not only would we never see our mother outside on the porch, when we would go in to check, she would be confused and say she hadn't called for us. This continued for a long time and we became used to it. Additionally, we would often hear strange noises in the woods, and I sometimes found that there seemed like a bad smell with no origin in the trees. The creepiest experiences then were when, without warning, the woods would go eerily silent. Now, all this can be explained by animals, and I learned to ignore it. The only thing I could never ignore was randomly getting an intense and overwhelming feeling of terror, and that I was being watched. Whenever this happened, I would run inside as fast as I could without looking behind me. This too could be attributed to something normal, like a little kid getting scared or being anxious when in the woods alone. Then, when I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade, I can't remember which, I saw something. I'll describe my front yard so this makes sense. On the right side was a large lawn with a couple of trees and small swing set, with the forest behind it. The left side was a small strip of grass, and then more woods, with a couple walking trails in them. It was fall, late enough that the trees were mostly bare and the ground was covered in dead leaves. I was playing by a swing set sometime in the late afternoon, early evening, when I heard a crashing noise, like a bunch of branches being broken, from the woods on the other side of the driveway. When I looked, there was a polar bear behind the first couple rows of trees, walking slowly on a walking path. I saw it clear as day, white coat reflecting in the sun. Obviously there aren't polar bears in the Maine. But me, being a kid who loves animals, thinks, oh my god, a polar bear! I need to go see. So I run over to where the path opens around the side of the trees. There's only a couple seconds where the polar bear is out of sight, as I'm rounding the corner of the woods right before the path. But when I get there, I'm faced with an explosion of leaves off the ground, and turkey gobbling hysterically and charging towards me down the path. I was so confused and ran backwards so it didn't hit me, and then I ran inside to tell my mum and brother. Obviously, my family did not believe me, and when I said I saw a polar bear and it turned into a turkey, to this day there are occasions when I will encounter an animal and I am brought back to that day and to that feeling of dread and being watched. It's not often, and only when I'm alone, driving at night or outside taking care of our chickens when no one is home. But there will be an animal that isn't quite right. It's usually a deer, once a fox, and it will either stand and stare at me in a way that's uncanny, or sometimes just watch me from afar, cock its head, and then run into the woods nearby. It looks normal for the most part, but there's just something very off, especially in its eyes, and I don't know how to describe it. Every time I get this sickening fear, like true bone-aching terror, as if I am facing down my death. And it's a feeling that I have only ever experienced in these situations. Some context that could be related, maybe not. I still will randomly hear my name being called by people I know when no one is there. I still often hear odd crunching, whistling, and tapping noises when in the woods, and there has been a phenomenon throughout my life to a point even my friends and my family have noticed it, where nothing bad will happen for a while, and then suddenly, usually 2 to 3 times a year, exactly 3 horrible, often life-changing things will happen in my life outside of my control. I often feel like something in those woods attached itself to me, But to be honest, I've never been a big believer in the paranormal, so I don't know that much. I really just want to know if anyone has any idea what this could be. The sightings never stopped. The deer with wrong eyes. The fox that cocked its head just too far. That same crushing dread, like standing at the edge of a predator's patience. Some say the woods of Maine are home to skinwalkers. Others whisper of wendigos, but the user knows the truth. Whoever took interest in her that day didn't just follow her home. It's waiting for the next 3 tragedies to strike. There are places where the land remembers, where the trees stand guard over stories older than roads, older than houses, older than the very concept of welcome. And sometimes the land speaks. In tonight's story, a freezing night, a stalled truck, and a long wait in the dark become something far stranger when the drums start. Not from a neighbor's house, not from any direction you can name, but from the woods themselves. This is the story of Reddit user u/on_the_square, and the moment they learned that some warnings aren't just stories. My favorite has to be, if I may, 2 instances. One was when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I was dating this young man from high school, and towards the end of the day, my mama picks both myself and then my boyfriend from school in an old black pickup truck that she bought a few months back. He lives way out in the country, so it was a bit of a drive, and the further you went out, the narrower the road got. I'm not entirely sure why, so when you came across someone going out, one of you had to scoot to the side to let the other pass. We get him to his house, and our mothers chat, and the topic goes to how their house is located in the territory of an old Indian tribe. His mama said that when the realtor was showing them the bit of land, the realtor said that the woods were haunted and all that kind of spooky shit. I don't know how legit that was because she was a bit of a storyteller, vivid imagination and such, but it was still fun to chat about. But she said that anyone who wasn't welcome on this land, the spirits will make sure you know. Okay, cool. I mean, I kind of believed her. When I would be hanging out at their house and would help my then boyfriend with tending to the miniature horses, I had an eerie as fuck, get me back indoors feel. I did not like being alone outside in the dark. Well, we visited a bit longer than my intended because it was getting dark, the truck had no heat, and it was mid to late fall. I forget which because it was chilly at night and my mom didn't want us to freeze on the way back. Now, as we are walking out the door, his mama tells us to be careful at the end of the driveway because it's on a bit of a slope, and in our truck we'd have to get a bit of a running start to get out onto the road safely. By the time we actually leave his house, it's dark and hard to see, so it's a bit nerve-wracking for both of us. We get to the end of the driveway and are about to hightail it out of the slope when a truck zooms by. We panic and the truck rolls back partially off the slope. Not enough to flip the truck, but enough to get us stuck. His parents' driveway was a long ways back from the road, and it was getting colder by the minute, and neither of us wanted to make the long walk back to let them know we got stuck. Neither of us had a cell phone, fuck if I know why, and so we figured that we would wait for them to come looking for us, as his older brother asked us to call them when we got home safe. If we didn't call after so long, they'd come look for us, so we were kinda stuck there for some time. A few minutes pass and we are freezing cold. What we thought would be a quick drive to and from turned out to be a few hours. I climb out of the cab of the truck to get blood flow to hopefully warm me up. I didn't want to exit the cab because dark, spooky, haunted forest, but fuck it. I was cold and bored. After I move around some, I lean back on the side of the truck when I suddenly hear, faintly at first, the sound of drums. So yeah, what the fuck, and listen closely. Maybe someone nearby was doing something. Surely it was a neighbor. People shoot off guns and shit. Why not play drums? I think I felt that way so not to freak out about what my boyfriend's mum said earlier. The spirits will let you know. Eventually, my then boyfriend and his brother came to get mum and myself and take us back to the trailer to warm up, use the bathroom, whatever, before taking us home. I told his mama what I heard out there, and she said, "I told you." The other instance goes as such. Back in 2012, our family tragically lost a little one, a sweet girl of only 3 years old. A few months to maybe a year after we buried her, we think her spirit tied to our home for a bit. What started that theory was how my dad couldn't find his glasses. He sets them on the nightstand next to the bed, as he does every night, and the one morning they were gone. We have cats, so he looks all around the area of the nightstand, including under the bed. He was getting upset, understandably so, and after a few minutes of him yelling about it, he went silent, then called out that he found them. He came walking out of the bedroom with not just his glasses, but a case that the optometrist gave with new pairs of glasses. He said that he found them in there, but he claims he never put them in the case. We all thought it was too spooky for me, but thought nothing of it after a while because hell, he could have done it and just forgotten. Over the course of the following week, we would actively hear little feet run up and down the hallway at night. We would hear the giggle of a child, various shadows, and the like. This went on for about a month, then it stopped. We, Mum, myself, sister, and dad, just shrugged our shoulders and moved on. I mean, the idea that little one came to visit brought my mother great comfort, as she adored that little girl. After a while, the thought of the little one being around tucked into the back of our minds. Every now and then we'd talk about it, but nothing more. One evening after dinner, the four of us were sitting at the dinner table in the kitchen, playing a game of greedy, when Mum let out a scream and jumped back in her seat. Startled, we were all like, "Oh my god, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Maybe a cat clawed her leg, a spider bit her. What? Something touched me and my leg is getting cold, she would exclaim loudly in a mild panic. A few minutes passed, and then I let out a startled cry and I too jumped back in my seat. Something had touched me too, and my leg, more so the spot that something touched me, was getting cold. After that, we didn't have another friendly visitor until a few years later. The touches stopped, the cold spots faded, but the memory of those moments, the laughter in the hall, the playful hiding of glasses, that inexplicable chill of contact from beyond remains. Perhaps it was wishful thinking. Perhaps it was something more. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only remembered. And in the quiet hours, when the fire burns low, we're left to wonder, was it a spirit lingering, or love refusing to let go? Home is supposed to be safe, a place where the locks work, where the walls stay still, where you can close your eyes without wondering what's watching in the dark. But for Reddit user u/Sudan_test 8284, home became something else entirely. It started with misplaced keys, then footsteps where there should be none, then a single child-sized footprint in an empty bathroom. And now, something is rifling through their closet in the dead of night. This is the story of an apartment where the past tenant never really left, and where the phrase, "you're not alone," takes on a whole new meaning. I never believed in the paranormal until last month. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment in an older building downtown. Nothing special, just a regular place with thin walls and questionable plumbing. The rent is affordable, which is all that matters in this economy. It started with small things I could easily dismiss. Keys not where I left them. Water running when I was sure I'd turn it off. The feeling of cold spots in the hallway, even when the heat was on full blast. Then came the footsteps. I first heard them 3 weeks ago while I was falling asleep. Light footsteps crossing my living room floor. I bolted upright, heart racing, convinced someone had broken in. I grabbed my phone ready to call 911 and carefully checked every corner of my tiny apartment. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. Windows still locked. I blamed it on the upstairs apartment, though it was nearly 2 a.m. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, I distinctively heard the footsteps walk from my living room to the foot of my bed. I lay completely still, paralyzed with fear, my eyes squeezed shut. The footsteps stopped right next to me. I could feel a presence there, standing, watching. The air felt heavy and cold, and I couldn't breathe. I finally gathered the courage to open my eyes. Nothing was there, but my bedroom door was now closed. I always sleep with it open. The following week, things escalated. I woke up to find all the kitchen cabinet doors wide open. Then my shower turned on by itself while I was cooking dinner. I called maintenance, but they found nothing wrong with the plumbing. Last Saturday, I returned from grocery shopping to find a single wet footprint in the middle of my bathroom floor. It wasn't mine. It was much smaller, like a child's. I finally broke down and asked my elderly neighbor if anyone had ever died in my unit. Her face went pale. She told me a young woman had lived there in the 1980s who had had mental health issues. They found her in the bathtub after she hadn't been seen for days. The neighbor mentioned something that made my blood run cold. The woman had always complained about hearing footsteps at night when no one was there. Last night was the worst. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of my closet door creaking open. As I lay in bed, I heard what sounded like someone quietly rifling through my clothes. The hangers made a distinct metallic sound as they slid across the rod. I finally worked up the courage to turn on my lamp, and the sound immediately stopped. The closet door was open about 6 inches, though I always keep it firmly shut because the latch is broken. When I checked this morning, nothing was missing, but all my hanging clothes were pushed to one side, bunched together as if someone had been looking through them. I'm writing this from a coffee shop because I'm afraid to go home. I told my coworker about it, and she thinks I should set up a camera, but honestly I'm afraid of what I might see. I don't know what to do. My lease locks me in for another 8 months, and I can't afford to break it. I'm sleeping with the lights on tonight, but I don't think it will help. She knows I can sense her now, and I think that's exactly what she wanted. And now that you've read my story, she's watching you too. The camera was never set up. The lease still has months left. And every night the footsteps return, a little louder, a little closer. Because some presences don't just want to be felt, they want to be known. So sleep with your lights on tonight, campers, and pay close attention to the sounds in your walls. After all, now that you've heard this story, who's to say your closet door hasn't creaked open just a little wider? Some houses don't just have ghosts, they have tenants, stubborn, territorial, and deeply, deeply unwelcoming. For Reddit user u/NixOldsley, their grandparents' home has been haunted longer than they've been alive. Animals refuse entire hallways. Relatives avoid certain rooms. And the air? Thick, with the kind of dread that clings to your skin. But recently, something changed. Because after decades of whispers and slammed doors, the entity finally made its feelings very clear by destroying something precious. This is our seventh story for tonight, that of a painting that didn't just fall, it was thrown. My grandparents' home has always been haunted as far back as I can remember. Every animal in the house to this day refuses to enter the back bedrooms and hallways, even my giant mutt with separation anxiety. The feeling of unease and being watched is constant, to the point many of my relatives refuse to use the bathroom in that house, as it's down that hallway. I used to sleep in the worst room of the house, the one that just emanated negativity and fear. I have many stories from growing up in that house, such as shower curtains being yanked, whispers and footsteps in the night, opening and closing doors. But recently things have kicked up a notch. My grandmother asked me to make the entity leave, and I did try. Sage, incense, holy water, telling the entity to leave as it was unwelcome in the house, etc. It did not work, but things did quiet down until now. Though I've moved away, I still visit often and I also paint. I spent months on a painting of lovebirds that my grandparents wanted to take and place in their home. I didn't think much of it. Sure, books and small knickknacks randomly fly off of shelves, but a large painting would be fine, right? Wrong. This painting is nearly 4.5 feet long and 4 feet wide and sat perfectly above their fireplace. As my grandparents are older, they had not hung the painting due to being unable to use ladders, but they leaned it against the wall and it stayed that way for weeks. Recently, they found my painting thrown to the wall face down with punctures through the canvas, and the canvas frame made of thick wood was warped. The glass statues in the front of the painting had also been knocked down but were unscathed, and nothing was found that could have caused such damage to the painting. My grandfather, bless his kind heart, painstakingly tried to repair the canvas and minimize the damage through the frame is still warped. The painting itself no longer has gaping holes as he pierced it back together and taped the back, even showing me his repairs that are far better than I could have imagined. He has carefully propped the painting back up and placed heavier knickknacks in front of it. Still, I am sad about my work being damaged, and I suspect it's from the entity. We don't live in an area where seismic activity would have been a concern, and if it had been seismic activity, I would have assumed other precariously placed knickknacks would also have fallen and been damaged. They have floor-to-ceiling bookshelves full of stuff. In the same room, the mantel still had most of its small and fragile stuff untouched, and nothing else was out of place. I've told my grandparents that I am not equipped to tackle this entity and directed them to other resources. This thing has been a constant headache in that house since I was a baby, and I suspect it won't go anywhere else willingly, as it made its annoyance at my removal attempt very clear. This is relatively tame compared to many stories I've seen on here, but I've been dealing with the paranormal my whole life, and this one particular entity is incredibly frustrating. If anyone has any advice for my grandparents, I'd love to hear it. The painting was repaired. The knickknacks were rearranged, but the message was received loud and clear. This thing isn't leaving. Not for sage, not for holy water, not for pleading. Some spirits don't haunt houses, they claim them. And after all these years, it seems this one has grown tired of sharing. Some figures don't just haunt places, they haunt generations. A fedora, a trench coat, a briefcase that shouldn't be there. For Reddit user u/arrived Ursi 953 and their friend This towering shadow has appeared across decades, across daylight and darkness, always watching, always changing. First black, now white. First silent, now stepping closer. And after years of silence, it's back, not in the woods, not on a path, but right outside a locked door, reaching forward. This is the story of something that doesn't just follow, it evolves. Hello, I would love for someone to give an explanation to these encounters that I am about to tell you. Sorry for grammar mistakes in advance. English is not my primary language. In the previous suburb that I've lived, there is like a playground beneath a small hill that my friends and I used to hang out there. On top of that hill is a walk path since in the 80s it was used as railings for trains. Everyone and everything that walks on that path can be seen from the playground since it's pretty open and nothing is obstructing the view except one very thin tree. 6 or 7 years ago, I was hanging on the playground with my friends as usual. I was only one facing the hill and the walk path, and it was getting dark. I looked down for a second so I can light a cigarette, and when I looked up, I saw an abnormally tall person that was completely pitch black. But you could make up a hat that looked like a fedora, and a long trench coat, and some sort of a briefcase from this silhouette. He was running fast, but dead silent, and when he got behind the tree, he was obstructing the view. He simply disappeared like in some cartoons. I was very confused by it at first, so without saying anything, I went over to the tree to see if anyone is behind it. While walking to the tree with my friends were confused as to why I'm going, and they were asking me, but I didn't say anything. Once I got to the tree, I saw nobody. If the person were to go in any direction after passing the tree, I would have seen him. And in that moment, my heart fell. I ran back to my friends, traumatized, to tell them what happened, and they started making fun of me, saying that I went crazy. 1 year later, I stopped hanging out with most of my friends, but I've started hanging out all the time with my current best friend, and one night we were just chilling and we started talking about strange encounters that we had experienced. I decided to tell him about my sighting of the shadow man creature. Once I started to describe what the man was wearing, I saw fear on his face. I said that he was wearing a fedora-like hat, and he interrupted me by saying, "And a trench coat?" I felt fear in that moment as well. Then he told me his encounter with the said man creature. He was walking on a path one summer night when he got attacked by some stray dogs. He crouched to pick up a rock, but when he lifted his head, a very tall shadow man stood right in front of him with no facial features except glowing red eyes. He wore a fedora hat, long trench coat, and carried a briefcase. Same things I had seen. He got scared, started sprinting the opposite direction, and went back home. Once he got home, he told his mother about the encounter, and she was freaked out as well. She told him that his aunt had an almost exact same encounter about 20 years ago. One day his aunt was picking some mushrooms, and once she lifted her head up, the same man stood in front of her. It was daytime. Only difference in this encounter was that the shadow had an old Motorola-like phone from the 80s in his hand. She ran away from it as well. The day after, I decided to tell my grandmother about the incidents since she is a very religious person. Everyone in the mentioned story is a Muslim, including me, but we do not practice their religion that much. She told me that it is probably a jinn and that she did not see it, but my great-grandmother did when she was young. She seen it in her house, and she said some dua, prayer, and the shadow disappeared. The night after that, my friend and I made up a reason for the sightings. We thought it was some type of warning to stop sinning when you were sinning heavily. Us two were sinning non-stop at that time, and that the object that the shadow holds meaning what you have to stop doing. After that, we did not hear or see anything related to the shadow creature until a month ago. At this current time, us two are far from the bad people that we were. We changed to be better, but sadly, we still do not practice religion that much, so I doubt that our reason was actually it. A month ago, I had a nightmare where I dreamed that I was in some abbeys, pitch black, and I was walking on some type of wooden balance beam, one used in gymnastics. And as I was walking on it, the shadow creature appeared on my left, but this time with nothing in his hands, and he was floating. He just stared at me for a few seconds while I was walking on it. After he raised his hands in the air, did some movement with them, and I was set on fire. I thought nothing about it at first, as I was just a nightmare, but I continued to have the same nightmare for the next 5 days. Tonight, my mentioned best friend, who is still living in the suburb, was coming back home from work around midnight. He went to his front door, and once he was untying his shoes, he remembered that he did not lock his car. So he went back to the car, locked it, turned around to get back to his front door, and he seen the shadow creature on his corner of his house. But now he was wearing a clearly white coat, like the ones that the doctors wear, as he described it, and it was taking a step towards him like it's sneaking. He sprinted inside his house, locked the doors, and gave me a call to tell me about the encounter. He sounded absolutely terrified. After about 5 minutes of trying to calm him down, he decided to take a peek out his window to see if anything or anyone is there, but there was absolutely nothing. We really want to know if there is any explanation to these encounters. The nightmares continue, the sightings escalate, and the question remains, is it a warning, a curse, or something far older, wearing new shapes to stay relevant? Whatever it is, one thing's certain, it's not done yet. Sleep tight, campers, and if you see a figure in a fedora standing just a little too still, don't check if it blinks. There are rules in the woods, rules passed down through generations. Don't whistle after dark. Don't answer voices that call your name. And never ask questions you don't want answered. Reddit user u/no_patient_280 learned this the hard way one night at White Lady Pond, where a simple whistle summoned something that followed them home, something that watched from the back seat, something that wore their friend's face, but smiled with teeth that weren't human. So I have a really bad habit of being into more ghosts and spiritual stuff. Also in advance, if there's any random periods or anything in here, I'm using voice to text and it messes it up. But last night we decided to go to this place called White Lady Pond here in Pennsylvania. You can look it up. It's a common place. My brother decided to start whistling, which is a no-go in the woods at night. We are very late superstitious people after that stuff started to get weird, so I started recording, and I was snapping pictures as I was recording. I caught something looking at us, and we were looking at the pictures as we were still there, and we were looking at the pictures and talking about it. We heard a demonic screech come from the woods near the pond, so we decided we were leaving. We went to a gas station, and then we decided to go up into the mountains that connect to the Appalachians, and we were sitting side by side in our cars, listening to music for a while. I decided to, whistle to scare my friend. I know, stupid. And then as we were listening to music, I had my flashlight on, and it panned in my back seat. My brother ended up walking over to my car, and he said, I don't want to alarm you or anything, but when your flashlight panned to your back seat, I saw somebody sitting in your back seat, and keep in mind, it was only me and my one friend in my car, my friend and my brother and the other car. So at this point, I was like, yeah, That's weird, but we stayed up there for a little bit longer and we were like talking to decide whether or not we were gonna stay up there all night like we used to do. And I was looking at my friend's face, who was in the driver's seat of her car. I was in the driver's seat of my car and she was looking right at me, but I had my lights on in my car due to the figure being in there, and her pupils were glowing white, and I saw a huge smile on her face. The only thing I can compare it to is the smiles in the movie Truth or Dare my friend saw. I looked absolutely horrified. She started freaking out and asking me what was going on because she thought it was my brother or something with my brother. And I just looked away and I was like, no, it wasn't him. She asked if it was my friend and my passenger. I said, no, it was you. And she goes, well, okay, let's leave and we can discuss this whenever we get into a more populated area. And we got to a gas station close by, maybe like 10 minutes away, and I told her what I saw, and she was absolutely terrified, shocked that I even saw her like that when she was having a conversation with me and her mouth wasn't moving. It was just that truth or dare type smile. I wish I could attach a picture from White Lady Pond, but it's not allowing me to. I also forgot to mention that we had a little spare box thing going, and we asked who it wanted, and it said mother out of everybody in the group. I'm the only pregnant one. They made it to the gas station. They left the mountains behind, but that smile, it lingers. Because when you play games with the unseen, you don't get to decide when it's over. And when it whispers mother to a group with only one pregnant woman, that's not a coincidence. That's a promise. Some places carry a reputation that lingers. Old cemeteries, broken staircases, whispers of the past. Greenwood Cemetery in Spokane, Washington is one of those places. Reddit user u/okbeginning79744 shares a night that began as curiosity and thrill, but quickly turned into something far more unsettling. What was captured in a photo and later felt during a solitary Ouija board session left behind a memory they won't soon forget. For some backstory, this happened in the Greenwood Cemetery in Spokane, Washington. The Greenwood Cemetery here is locally famous for being haunted. There is a specific old broken staircase leading into the cemetery called 1,000 Steps, and many people in my city have stories about seeing entities on the steps and feeling odd and depressed while walking up them. My story doesn't take place on the steps, but rather in the actual cemetery. My friends and I did use the 1,000 Steps entrance to enter the cemetery. This happened 3 to 4 years ago, 2021 or 2022. A group of my friends and I, 2 male and 1 female, decided we'd go to the Greenwood Cemetery and bring a Ouija board. I'ma be so real. The idea for the Ouija board was 100% mine. I used to play with them semi-often, and this is the only experience I've had that actually frightened me. My friends and I walked around a bit looking at headstones, and my friend, female, and I decided we wanted to have a picture taken of us together, so our other friend, male one, took a photo of us. Immediately after the photo was taken, male one showed us the weird entity standing behind me in the photo. In the picture, I blocked out my friend because I'm not sure she'd want to be associated with this online. We began looking in the area behind where we had taken the photo for anything that could have caused the shadow looking thing behind me. Male one decided to take a picture of the area directly behind us to see if anything would pop up again. Nothing did. In the entity photo on the right side of me, you can see the headstone of the second photo slightly beside my legs, although I am blocking majority of the headstone. After we decided, yeah, no, that's definitely a ghost, we moved closer to the way we came in. There was a large cement circle on the ground, probably 10 to 15 feet in diameter. and we all sat there and talked for a bit. I brought out the Ouija board and asked if anyone wanted to try it with me. Turns out I'm the dumb white person from every horror movie ever, because every friend present said no. We were all a bit on edge due to the picture. I decided I'd play it by myself. Dumb idea. I am a very observant and down-to-earth person. I usually notice things that are weird before my friends do, but for some reason while playing with the Ouija board that night, it felt like my brain had gone a bit fuzzy, almost like my defenses were completely lowered as soon as my fingers were on the planchette. I began asking my typical Ouija board questions. Is anyone with me? Am I alone? How old are you? Did you live on Earth as a human, etc.? The spirit was only sliding the planchette to yes or the letter U. I didn't catch on, but my friends did. I asked the spirit, is there something you'd like to tell us? The planchette circled the letter U again. I asked, is there something you want? Once again circled U. I still at this point did not realize fully what the spirit was saying. I asked, do you mean someone in my group? It circled you. I asked, do you mean you as in myself? I cannot remember if my friends let the spirit answer or if they made me say goodbye before we got an answer. They were terrified, rightfully so. I ended the Ouija board, and as soon as my hands were off the planchette, I felt immediately anxious. I felt extremely on edge and actually started processing what the hell happened. We left right after that. Mill 2, whom I was the closest to at the time, couldn't stop commenting on how weird it was that I didn't end the game the first time it said you, and how it was completely out of character for me to not have an ounce of anxiety while playing the game. I still don't know if the entity in the picture and the spirit I talked to were the same. Honestly, I don't care to find out. I wish there was more to the story, but alas, I don't think anything attached to me. I didn't have any unusual things happen after this. To this day, the user wonders what truly happened that night in Greenwood Cemetery. Was the entity in the photo the same as the one that answered through the board, or was something else watching in silence? Some questions are better left unanswered, and some games are better left unplayed. Some places carry with them a presence, unseen, unspoken, but unmistakable. A warehouse in North Carolina became just that for one man and everyone who followed in his footsteps. Reddit user u/AcesBlue99 recounts the experience of their pop, a seasoned security guard who spent over 2 decades working nights in a building that most wouldn't last a week in. What he saw, heard, and lived through would leave even the bravest questioning reality. Here is our last story for tonight, campers. My pop is by far one of the most fearless men I've ever met. Here's why. My pop worked as a security at a plant warehouse, and he also controlled the gate to let people in and out of the premises. He worked from 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. During each hour, he had to walk around the plant and had to turn the key at these boxes placed in each department, and this box would basically log in each time he keyed the box, which would let the boss know the time his rounds were completed. Well, this plant was huge and had 2 floors. Around 7 p.m. he would be the only person in the premises. Usually around midnight is when weird things would take place. Incident 1. One night during his rounds, he was walking, doing his rounds like normal, and he would hear this sound like pebbles was being thrown as he was walking. He looks down and realizes that these pebbles would skip past him on the floor. He turned around and wouldn't see anything, but when he would begin walking, the pebbles would continue to get thrown and skip and bounce past him. When this was happening, As he was approaching an elevator, he hears a ding, and the elevator started coming down to the floor he was on. He pulls his gun out and waits to see who or what comes out of the elevator. The elevator opens. Nobody is inside. Pop shrugs it off and ignores the pebbles and continues to walk. As he turns to the corner, he notices a pallet jack, the thing people use to move around pallets, hovering in the air. Now, mind you, he's the only one on the site and no machine is running, so it's really quiet. As he looks at the pallet jack hovering, it suddenly crashes to the floor, making a horrific loud sound. He doesn't panic, but he continued to finish his rounds while holding his Glock 19. Incident 2. Around the same time on a different day, as he's making his rounds, he notices someone walking on the other side of the floor he's on. The guy turns, glances at my Pop while continuing to walk. Pop realizes that usually some people stay over who work in the offices, but he recalled letting the last person out of the gate around 8:30 p.m. He goes to confront this man he saw that was walking towards a door that had chains on them. As he gets to where the man was heading, he realizes that chains were still there and he didn't understand where he went all of a sudden. He could have passed my Pop when he realized he couldn't go out of the door that's changed. Pop continues to look for him. He's nowhere to be found. Incident 3. My dad was to train a retired Marine who always talked pretty tough, so my dad trains him. Well, the next night, the Marine goes in to replace my Pop for that night. Around 11 p.m., he calls my Pop to tell him that he's hearing something shuffling around on the top floor and asks Pop, is people still there? Pop tells him that there's absolutely nobody there and that he should already know this because he's the guard on duty and that the last person usually leaves between 7 to 8 p.m. While on the phone, he begins to hear the shuffling again and asks Pop, can he hear it over the phone? My Pop does and tells him to finish his rounds, which would eventually lead him upstairs. The Marine, obviously scared, says okay and hangs up the phone. Pop gets a call back from the Marine letting him know he's now outside waiting for the police to come. Pop asks why while putting his clothes on to get there because he's the boss. The Marine tells him when he walked up to the second floor, all the furniture was now shifted all to one side of the warehouse and stacked on top of each other. He sounded horrified. My Pop gets there and the police is already there going through the building. A couple police took pictures of the stacked furniture. We're talking heavy couches, lazy boys, etc. The police didn't find any on, of course. The Marine asks my Pop, do weird things happen here? And my Pop tells him all the time and tells him about a few incidents he experienced. The Marine quit on spot. Incident 4. As a teenager, if I didn't have school, my dad would let me come with him to work. I already knew about what my Pop had told me, but of course, being with my Pop, I feared nothing. Well, on the last round of the night, we walked and talked about life and about the scary things he's experienced when I told him I needed to use the bathroom. Well, the plant had bathrooms all around, but he told me the cleaner ones were upstairs, where the office workers use. When we get there, Pop said, you remember how to get out, right? I tell him of course, because I've walked these rounds with him since a kid. He was there 21 years. So he said okay. While I'm in the bathroom, soon as I'm done peeing, all the lights go off. Only certain lights were still on, but nowhere near enough to be able to see. So I man up and start walking towards the exit. Right before I get there, my Pop yells, son, come back down towards the stairs to go back down. We're gonna exit through the back. So as I begin retracing how to get to the stairs, I yell, hey Pop, what happened to the lights? He ignores the question and says, come to the stairs and meet me down here. That was an automatic red flag. Pop would have turned his flashlight on that he always carried on his utility belt and why would he want me to go backwards? He already keyed that area. I ignored the voice and turned around and run towards the exit. While running, he began to laugh, unlike how my pop laughs, and plus his voice sounded like it was 4 voices all at once. When I made it outside, Pop was at the guardhouse sitting in the truck, like he always did sometimes. The guardhouse is small and got stuffy during the summer. When I got to the truck, my Pop knew I experienced something. I told him what happened, and he seemed more scared for me than I was. My Pop has long retired from that place, and when he retired, every new guard they hired wouldn't stay long. They even tried to hire to work in pairs, and they still wouldn't quit. Rumor is the building was on an old Indian graveyard, which I believe because I live in a country called Catawba, NC. It was named after the Catawba Indians. Till now, the stories from the warehouse continue to echo. The user's Pop may have retired, but the building hasn't quieted down. Guards come and go, but the presence remains. Was it the land beneath, the history it holds, or something darker that resides within those walls? Some places aren't just haunted, they resist being forgotten. The fire's gone out, campers, but the woods, they're wide awake. Remember what we learned tonight. Some doors shouldn't be opened, some whistles shouldn't be answered, and some smiles aren't smiles at all. If you listen closely, you might hear them now, the things we spoke of, scratching at the edges of your world. So go ahead, turn on all the lights, check every closet. But know this, now that you've heard these stories, they've heard you too. Sweet dreams.
As the night gets longer and the darkness creeps in, with the eerie silence broken only by whispering wind, come gather round the fire, the flickering flames, and hear the tales of the spooky and the strange. A chill up your back, a shiver up your spine. You'll be haunted by the things that you find. Legends will unfold and stories will be told at the Scaredy Campfire, for only the bold